Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is, again, real progress in terms of making GSA a more efficient broker for all the federal agencies in terms of the space they should acquire. And I particularly like the requirement of consideration of co-location and consolidation opportunities. My Eugene office is in a courthouse palace, and it's a very large, empty, cavernous space most of the time, not a particularly active court. And yet, there are other federal agencies that require the level of security there and easily could have been designed into that structure. And so I look forward to a future where GSA considers that for all space opportunities, even for courthouses. I know, of course, the courts have their strong preference to have large, empty, open, monumental spaces, but I think we can do better for the taxpayer. So, again, this bill will help move us along. It's also going to look at leasing versus purchase. I hope we can get into the VA process at some point, because the Veterans Administration is often, because of the stupidity of our budget process, we lease space that we could lease purchase, or we could purchase and save tremendous amounts of money. So this will help in that area too. With that, I yield back. Fully support the bill.
Thank you, gentlemen. And now recognize Mr. Carson for a statement.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you to Chairman Barletta and Ranking Member DeFazio. As I noted yesterday, Mr. Chairman, during our Oversight Committee, GSA continues to improve its space management as mandated by this committee and the administration's freeze on the footprint policy. I think more importantly, Chairman, most of the leases are long-term, giving GSA the leverage necessary to take advantage of a buyer's market and extract concessions from landlords. And quite frankly, the few short-term leases in this package, Mr. Chairman, are to facilitate federal agencies moving out of leased space into owned space. So I thank the gentleman, and I yield back.
Thank the gentleman. Any other members seek to be recognized? I just want to say that I'm extremely proud of the work done on this. Ms. Norton and I, 10 years ago or so, Ms. Norton's been working on it for a longer time than that, and I have, but worked together, as Mr. DeFazio pointed, to consolidate, to make sure that with the footprints at the right size, and these courthouses, as Mr. DeFazio points out, are these palaces. The courtrooms are not being utilized, and the judiciary needs to fall under the same kind of scrutiny when it comes to spending dollars as all these other agencies do. So again, I'm very, very pleased with this piece of legislation, and I also just want to tip my hat to Judge Brooks Smith, who happens to be from my district, who is the head of this part of the judiciary. He oversees this and has done he's done yeoman's work trying to convince these judges they've got to share courthouses, they've got to be more fiscally responsible. And I know Judge Smith was testifying here yesterday, so I really appreciate Judge Smith's work on this and dealing with a body of folks that are appointed for life. It's tough to get things done when they can just say no, and there's no ramifications to it. So again, Judge Smith, if you're listening, thanks for all your hard work. With that, Congressman Denham, who is a former chair of this subcommittee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to also offer my support for this legislation and commend Chairman Barletta on his strong leadership on reducing the federal footprint. This bill goes a long way in streamlining GSA's extremely flawed and often wasteful leasing policy. We've got to do more to get agencies to combine their federal footprint, to look at vacant space before they get a lease. And in this case, this streamlined leasing pilot program would allow simplifying most GSA leases and allow for them to consolidate their office space. So for that reason, I not only support this, but again want to commend the strong leadership and the numerous hearings that Mr. Barletta has held on this topic.
Thank the gentleman. Any other members wish to be recognized? Seeing none, we will now consider the bill for amendment. I recognize Mr. Barletta.
Mr. Chairman, I have an amendment at the desk. I ask unanimous consent the amendment be considered as read.
Without objection to order, the clerk will designate the amendment
Amendment number 60, offered by Mr. Barletta.
Mr. Barletta is recognized to speak on the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This amendment makes a clarifying change to Section 10 of the bill at the request of the Congressional Budget Office. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Do any members wish to be recognized on the amendment? Seeing none, are there amendments to the amendment? If not, the question is on the amendment. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed signify by saying nay. The ayes have it, and the amendment is agreed to. Are there any other amendments? Ms. Norton is recognized.
Mr. Chairman, I have an amendment at the desk.
Without objection to order, the clerk will designate the amendment.
Amendment number 79, offered by Ms. Norton.
Mr. Chairman, let's just call this the Motherhood Amendment, because this amendment would allow visitors to use space that should already be available for lactation for nursing mothers. Federal law already requires that such space be available for federal employees, though I recently discovered that the Smithsonian Institution was observing this in the breach, and they quickly corrected it. But the fact is that thousands of people visit federal facilities in the District of Columbia, but also throughout the United States. So this city is not alone in seeing lobbyists, people from our own districts, our own constituents. Among them will be some nursing mothers, and we should be very pleased about that, since in Democratic and Republican administrations alike, it has been public policy to encourage nursing. The U.S. Department of Agriculture, the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention continue to encourage breastfeeding. We're talking about existing space. We're talking about space that may be used for something else. They're not going to be thousands of lactating mothers coming forward, but the CBO itself has indicated to us that there is no financial impact, precisely because this space in leased or federally owned buildings is not new, but is available currently. Finally, Mr. Speaker, Mr. Chairman, I should point the benefits of breastfeeding, which have been well documented by the federal government. Breast milk contains antibodies and hormones that boost a baby's immune system, and studies have shown that these children ultimately have lower risk for asthma and respiratory disease and diabetes. And something I did not know until I looked into this matter is that breastfeeding also has benefits for mothers. It has been discovered that it lowers the risk for diabetes and certain forms of cancer. Considering these benefits to both the mother and the infant, considering existing federal policy that already mandates that such space be available to federal employees, my amendment simply would make it available to visitors to federal facilities here and across the country. And so, Mr. Chairman, I ask acceptance by the amendment on both sides of the aisle.
Do any other members wish to be recognized?
Mr. Chairman, I
Mr.
fully
DeFazio?
support the common sense amendment by the gentlelady, and as she points out, this relates to motherhood. Apple pie will be a later amendment, so I urge support.
I am in total agreement with Mr. DeFazio. Are there any other amendments to the amendment? If none, the question is on the amendment. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed signify by saying nay. The ayes have it, and the amendment is agreed to.
Now back to page.
Are there any other amendments?
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Carbello is recognized for an amendment.
I have an amendment at the desk that I'm offering for Mr. Davis of Illinois.
Without objection, so ordered. The clerk will designate the amendment.
Amendment number 41, offered by Mr. Davis.
Mr. Carbello is recognized for Mr. Davis's amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As the landlord of the largest portfolio of real estate in the country, the General Services Administration is in a unique position to promote better refrigerant management practices. While the reuse of products such as metal, paper, and glass is widely accepted and promoted, there has been very little action or demand for the recovery, reuse, and reclamation of refrigerants. Reclaimed refrigerants are certified to meet the same purity standard as newly manufactured refrigerant and therefore meet compressor manufacturer specification and warranty standards. A GSA policy promoting reclaimed refrigerant would encourage better refrigerant management practices in the private sector. As companies recognize that their used refrigerant has an economic value, they will be more likely to minimize leaks and treat the refrigerant as an asset instead of a liability. Importantly, reclaimed refrigerants cost the same as virgin refrigerants, meaning such a policy would come at no additional cost to the taxpayer. The environmental benefits would also be significant. The emissions avoided by every 10,000 pounds of reclaimed HFCs purchased by the federal government would be equivalent to taking nearly 1,000 cars off the road or powering more than 600 homes for a year. This amendment does not require GSA to promote the procurement of reclaimed refrigerants, but simply requests the agency to provide a report to Congress on the feasibility of doing so at federal buildings. I urge adoption, and I yield back.
Thank the gentleman. Any other members wish to be heard on this amendment? Seeing Mr. DeFazio.
Yeah, sorry, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I fully support the amendment. I mean, there may be some who question climate change, but this will prevent this. These are really extreme materials in terms of contribution to damaging the atmosphere and also the ozone layer. So I think this is common sense and potentially a cost-saving amendment.
I thank the gentleman. I see Mr. Davis has arrived, so we recognize Mr. Davis to speak on his amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think Mr. Curbelo said it all on my behalf. Vote for this. It's a great common sense solution to an issue that I think we can make sure that the taxpayers of this country are able to do what's necessary to not only protect our environment, but also ensure that GSA is doing a much better job. So, Mr. Curbelo, thank you for offering my remarks, and I yield back.
Thank the gentleman. Any other members wish to be recognized?
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Barletta.
I'd like to thank Mr. Davis for working with us on this issue. This amendment will provide us with an opportunity to evaluate the use of recycled refrigerants in the building systems. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any other members wish to be recognized? Seeing none, are there amendments to the amendment? Seeing none, the question is on the amendment. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed signify by saying nay. The ayes have it. The amendment is agreed to. We're done with those, right? Are there any other amendments? I recognize Mr. Barletta for a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I move that H.R. 4487 as amended be approved and reported favorably to the House.
Questions on the motion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed signify by saying nay. The ayes have it, and the motion is agreed to. The bill is amended. It's approved and ordered reported favorably to the House. We'll now consider